Hello everyone. So for this Fearless Fridays, I'm here with Lewis, who I met at a digital nomad conference last October. So Lewis, if you could start by telling us who you are and what you were doing before, and then also a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Lewis, and I've kind of pretty much always been a computer programmer. But before, I was working for a consultancy, like an SAP consultancy. So if you don't know what that means, it basically means big corporate IT is what my job was before. Yeah, and now I'm an independent app developer. So I have a couple of iPhone apps that live in the Apple App Store, and that is my full-time job. Full-time thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a relatively typical kind of digital nomad, remote working kind of job. Would you say so? Or
I don't. Well, yeah, I don't think it's that common. So I think working in IT is
yeah.
definitely very common. But I think the most common digital nomad thing is probably freelancing. But then there are people who have their own businesses as well. So I guess it depends. From my kind of Zoom level of being really close to it, I don't feel like there's a lot of people doing the same as me. But maybe if you're further away, I don't mean that disrespectfully or anything, but like the further away from it you are, probably, there's a lot of people doing IT. Certainly, like coding is a common skill to take on the road.
Okay.
To work with. Yeah.
But that's great that that's now your full-time work as well, because a lot of people juggle a lot of different projects. So what was the moment at which, or what drove you to decide to leave that big corporate environment, as you said, and to go towards app development instead on the road?
So the kind of came in a couple of stages, but really the kind of seed of it all was me and Jen's my wife, we were on honeymoon in Thailand, and we were walking around this town called Chiang Mai, which is a really well-known kind of now digital nomad spot, but at the time it wasn't, and we didn't know it was. But we were just walking around this town, and we were like, we could live here, like, well, we could just move everything to Thailand. And kind of within 6 months of that, or 3 months after that, we gave our 3 months notice, and 3 months after that, we were living in Thailand. And at that point, I didn't have like my app business, but we were going to just take some time off. We had some savings. Going to take some time off with the plan of doing it full time and probably doing programming, but not. And I wanted to do the apps, but it took like 5 years to get the apps to a point where they were full time.
Okay. So it was really the travel aspect or the living in Thailand part that drove you to make the decision, would you say? Or?
Yeah, so it was like before that point, we'd never been outside of Europe, so being in Thailand was like such a culture shock, but in such a good way. And life was so different, and we kind of really felt like, actually, wow, there's a lot of the world that we haven't seen, and we want to kind of do more and see more. And so that was a big driver. For me, I actually really, this is possibly against your ethos, but I actually really liked my job. It was a big corporate kind of landscape, but the company I was at was really nice. They treated me really well. They paid me really well. And me and my wife and my friend all gave our notice on the same day. So
okay.
And I think my wife and my friend were worried that I was going to chicken out, and I was going to not give my notice, and they were going to give their notice.
Okay.
I was going to do it. But I think that I don't know whether that's true or not. But I thought that was. But I was always going to do it. Like I always wanted to do the other stuff, but it wasn't like I was jumping from that so much as jumping to this, if you see that.
Yeah. No, and that's actually less usual, I think, in a way, because a lot of people are clear on the not this part, but less clear on what they're escaping to. It's certainly not against my ethos, though, because I think if people love their work and if they want to continue, I think that's amazing. And, loads of people fit in that environment and it suits them and they enjoy it and they find it meaningful, and people need to do these jobs. It's more for the people who are feeling like this is not where I want to be, but not doing anything about it. I think that's really where I feel like, and certainly having your own business, being on the road, I call it on the road, but, being location independent, I guess for me is more the important thing, not being tied to that office location, being your own boss and so on. I think there's a big appeal to a lot of us there.
Yeah, definitely.
So not to say that you can't enjoy your corporate work as well, because I'm sure a lot of people do. So you mentioned that it took about 5 years to build up the app business, really. So how are you managing the money situation in that time?
So basically, I was freelancing.
Okay.
So I actually did a fair bit of work. I had two companies that I'd done work for while I was in the UK, and so one of them I'd done freelance work for a long years beforehand, and then the other one was the company where I was where I'd been working before. And so with the company where I've been working before, I just said to them, look, I'm going to need money. I don't want to work here anymore, but I'm going to need money. And we just stayed in touch, and they got to the point where they were busy and they had a project or a customer that I'd worked with. And so it kind of suited them well to just, they had this small, it wasn't enough for a full-time person. And they just kind of could give me X number of hours a week. And that was the same with the other company that I was with, that I could pick up freelance hours with them.
Perfect.
And so that worked out, fairly well. It is stressful, it's very feast or famine. So sometimes you have too much work, and then other times you're like, well, I've got no work inside. So balancing that is something that's a challenge. But and then so what I was trying to do was while I didn't have freelance work, was to work on the app and build that up as a business and grow that.
Yeah, okay, so much. I think that's great. So the freelancing consulting is sort of as you said, not an easy step, but certainly a good transition towards running your own business, because you have those skills, you have that network, as you did very sensibly, not turning your back on those connections that you had already.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that I see a lot is people saying, it's like people who just want to quit and that's it. And I think really when you're in and obviously it's different for everybody, but if you're in a job, I think your first thing should be to try and talk them into letting you work. If you don't want to work part-time or to work freelance or whatever. And how can you take what you've got and make that better for you and better for them? And so it suited my old company for me to work part-time because they were busy and they didn't have to hire a full-time person, and hiring a new person is risky. You don't know what you're going to get, but they could take someone they know and they liked and give them 20 hours work a week, and then that suited them very well and it suited me very well. I think that kind of situation where you can benefit yourself and benefit your employer exists a lot more than people take for granted. So
no, that I do love, and that is my ethos. So taking the one step instead of the leap, I think that's great advice there. Absolutely, we think in very black and white binary terms. Either we're working in this job we potentially don't like, or we're having our dream freedom, and no money probably. And there's a lot of steps in between there, right? So that's a great piece of advice already there in terms of seeing if you can, within the parameters of that job, kind of go part time or more remote work, perhaps. That's some great advice. And what were the other challenges then? You had the feast and famine, as you said there in the early days. What other challenges did you experience?
So the feast and famine was the main thing, and then it was it's very first world, but it was like I said, it was kind of 4 or 5 years before the apps were a going concern, and it was like a constant thing on my mind. It's like, will the apps ever be something that I can do as a full-time living? And should I really focus a lot on that? Or should I really focus on growing, just embrace freelancing and go all in on that? Because part of the reason it was feast and famine was because I was never spending any time or as much time as I should have been looking for work, for new freelance work. Because all my free time I spent trying to grow the business. And so finding that balance or whatever was a big challenge. And I think the main advice I would give on that is which is super easy to say, is just to try not to worry about it. I spent so much time being stressed about, am I going to freelance or am I going to have this business? And really, I was never hungry, I was never sick. My life was always pretty good. And if I'd spent less time being with negative emotions about that, I probably would have got, moved forward quicker. That was a big.
That's so true. No, that is funny, isn't it? And as you said, the worst case scenario isn't actually that bad, because you are able to generally, we're fortunate enough to not have to starve and live on the streets necessarily. We usually find a solution. And also, as you said, you're actually wasting emotional energy and time. In fact, I was just speaking to someone a few minutes ago who was saying that they didn't have any time in their week. And then they were saying that every day after work, they come home and they complain for half an hour about, their awful job. And actually, those 30 minutes you can actually should be using to maybe try to get away from that job. So yeah, that's a good point in terms of trying. And I know, as you said, it's hard, but having the faith and in the meantime doing everything you can to make what you want a reality, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And so where did you get the support?
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say one other thing that I did in that actually before I quit my corporate job was to start trying to get up really early and to work on this thing that I wanted to be, this app business, like work on that before going to my job, because I realized that was my best, like I was giving my best energy or my most energy to my work or to my job, and I wanted to give it to myself. So trying to find a way to do that is a good thing to do. So like your person you were speaking to who's coming home, and at the end of the day maybe they're too tired to work on whatever they want to work on for themselves, and it's kind of hard to get up early, but it's totally worth it to get up an hour earlier, and like half an hour a day on your own thing will go so far over like a few months, and you can do so much more half an hour before work than you can half an hour after work.
That's another great point, and that's I couldn't agree more in terms of putting that first. And I've come across people, so someone I know comes into the office at 5 o'clock in the morning and works on their book for a couple of hours. Someone else wanted to start doing art, and they got up really early and they started doing art. They started painting, in the morning. So I think you're right there. If it's something you really want to do, if you're really motivated, you can carve out that time. And I think the other part, as you said, putting that first. For me, the same thing, I have these projects like writing my book or even launching a podcast, and no one's going to, well, maybe now people will, because I've told everyone, now people will tell me off if I don't do it. But, it's something that's meaningful to me, and it's so easy to just go straight into your emails and your deadlines and other things and not do that. So I think that's fantastic advice to, even if it's just half an hour in the morning, put your personal passion project first. So the question I was asking was, you mentioned there that you're obviously traveling with your wife, but where have you been getting the support along the way through that feast and famine, through the various, experiences, I suppose, or the challenge of going through the transition and then continuing now as well?
Yeah, I've probably didn't have as much support as well. I didn't have as much support as I would like. So my wife, Jen, was a huge support, of course. But outside of that, it's I felt like I've been a lot better at getting or finding support since I've been more successful, really. So 7 in 7, where we met at the conference, things like that are really great way to meet people, meet people like you, and to get support there. So I've done things like I've tried to run mastermind groups, or I did run a mastermind group in Thailand for a little bit, and that was really good. But it kind of petered out after a while, people got on and stuff like that. And so I guess I did get there's podcasts that I listen to, which kind of is always useful if you can find a podcast that's kind of in your niche or in the thing that you want to do, and not necessarily one of the kind of business type podcasts, but just something that's in your sector almost. Is really good. Yeah, it gives you a good feeling.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think immersing yourself in a particular topic, as you said, listening to what other people are doing. The mastermind one is definitely a growing one, and I think I must admit I even had that thought as well. And I was talking to a few friends who are sort of in the same kind of situation to have a monthly catch up. But it's hard. It's certainly another thing that you're putting on your plate, isn't it? So it needs to really be bringing a lot of value to everyone involved in order for it to warrant investing that time in it. But yeah, conferences, podcasts. Anything else?
I think it's actually just to consciously focus on it. So I was talking about it out loud. I realised I wish that I'd actually thought to myself or had a goal. How am I going to get support, or who's going to help me? And consciously work on getting more support or companionship, or whatever. However you think of it, just getting help is something. It's easy to think, I don't need help. I should be able to do this on my own.
Yes.
And I don't think that is as true as you think it is. And I wish I'd gotten more help.
Okay, that's a good insight. Yeah, it's funny that we do think we can do everything ourselves, and sometimes we can, but either we burn out, or it's slower, or it's more painful, takes longer. And I agree with you, as you said at the beginning, that actually the more successful you become, ironically, the more you realise, I suppose, the more confident that you are to ask for help, and you recognise that actually having someone do this for you or advise you on this will help you to reach your goals faster. So it might be tricky to do that when you're first starting out, but leaning into maybe more of an investor mindset rather than being worried about getting the help you need, I think that's a great tip as well. So what's the best part of your lifestyle right now? I know you're calling from Mexico now, so that sounds pretty tempting to, I'm sure, a lot of our audience, but what would you say is the best part of your new work and lifestyle?
I think it is, I mean, it sounds mega corny, but I think it is the freedom. So I feel like really I have like pretty much control over all aspects of my life, like how I spend my time, where we go, like everything is where is under my influence, as it were. And so it's great to be able to travel and to think, oh, we're going to come to Mexico, hour, take a day off, or like a few days off, and I really appreciate that. Like every day, it's like the day I wake up after I haven't done any work and I'm still earning, money has still come in. Like I appreciate that every day.
Yeah.
That is pretty great feeling.
So some of that passive kind of income coming in as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not corny at all. I think freedom is definitely it's the dream. It's why those of us who did leave our corporate jobs because of that, I think the freedom is definitely the big appeal. And I absolutely agree in terms of the flexibility and financial freedom, hopefully, as well, and make your own choices and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's worth working for. And like I was saying, it kind of took years to get the apps going, like to build them into being a going concern. But I'm totally now glad that I did that. And it's definitely worthwhile. So just to keep going with stuff. Even if it's only 5% or 10%, you just keep going. Yeah, it's worth it.
Okay, it's worth it. Well, look, you've already given actually, I think 5 or 6 pieces of amazing advice, but my final question is, what advice would you give? So if you have any more wisdom to share in terms of, maybe someone who's considering the change or someone who's already doing it but struggling a bit and worried, should I continue, should I stop?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that the best advice is to resist the urge to just throw it all away. Like I feel like that's the thing I see the most that I think that I disagree with the most. So just really think about not doing that.
Turning your back, you mean, on the corporate job and so on, and trying to...
Obviously the urge to jump completely is very strong, and I totally get that. But I think if you can find a way not to do that and just think, how could I not jump? But like you say, like take one step. Yeah. I think that is probably my best advice, and you can apply that at any time to anything, like even or to a lot of things. Like take one step instead of a big leap. How
can I not jump? I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And what can I do? Yeah, exactly. Instead of jumping, but just stepping. Like there's often you just assume there isn't a way, and actually, when you think about it, there is a way. So,
great. Yeah, and taking that small step, I find, also brings you confidence and it creates momentum, and then before you know it, you are taking lots more steps, and things often turn out better than you realise they could do. So, that's great. I love that. To find a way to not jump. Great. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and really, again, some really powerful nuggets. So I hope people listen to those because I think there's some really great tips in there. So where can we find you or your business online? How can we find out more about you?
Yeah, so my website is lewismakesapps.com, and my Twitter is @lewismakesapps. So those are the best ways to find me. Sure.
Excellent branding. I love it. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and if people have more questions about app development or anything like that, then I'm happy to do my best to answer them. So,
that's very kind of you.
That would be a pleasure to help with.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you again, Lewis. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy, I'm sure, schedule and for sharing your insights. And thanks so much, and good luck with the rest of your journey with the business and physically as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.